Bienvenidos a la rueda de prensa que va a ofrecer a continuación el doctor Demis Hassabis, Premio Princesa de Asturias de Investigación Científica y Técnica. Les recordamos que deben apagar sus teléfonos móviles o silenciarlos. Cuando quieran formular una pregunta, levanten la mano y les pasaremos un micro y deberán indicar su nombre y el medio para el que trabajan. En primer lugar, el doctor Hassabis les dirigirá unas palabras y a continuación abriremos el turno de preguntas. Adelante.
Yes, thank you. It's an amazing honor to be here and an amazing honor to accept this fantastic award. And I really look forward to the whole week and especially things like the art exhibition and to explore the amazing town here.
Muchas gracias. Abrimos ahora el turno de preguntas.
Hola, Lucía Menéndez de Televisión Española. Bueno, primero de todo, enhorabuena por el galardón. Y yo quería saber si usted cree que la inteligencia artificial es capaz de superar a los humanos completamente. Gracias.
Thanks. So I've worked on AI my whole career because I think it's has the potential to be one of the most beneficial tools for humanity. And I think if we use it in the right way, I think it can help us with many of the big challenges that face society today, from curing diseases to tackling climate change. And I think we need powerful new technologies like AI to be able to deal with these huge problems that are facing society.
Siguiente pregunta, por favor.
Hola, soy Eduardo Lagar del periódico La Nueva España. Enhorabuena por el premio y quería preguntarle por qué tenemos que tener miedo a la inteligencia artificial.
So I think, as with any new powerful technology, I think whether it ends up being good or bad depends on how humans end up using it, and we as a society end up using it. So, as I said in the first answer, I think AI is has one of the most potentials to do good in the world, as a tool to help humanity. But of course, it's like with many powerful technologies, it's a dual-use technology. It can be used for good or bad. But I think that's why it's important for all of society to decide how we should deploy these systems and use these systems and what kinds of things we should use them for. So obviously at DeepMind, at my company, we focus on using AI to accelerate scientific discovery. And we ourselves apply it to things like medical applications, things like AlphaFold, our program to solve the protein folding problem. We open source that and folded all the proteins there are known to science, and that has already accelerated many drug discovery programs. So I think that's just one example of what AI can do in the future. And I think it can also play a part in many other big problems too. As I was mentioning, climate change, I think it can help accelerate technologies that could help with that, from fusion to material design. So, I see it as a tremendous opportunity for humanity that, could be as revolutionary as the internet was, or perhaps even electricity. But we have to, be careful with how we use it and thoughtful about how we deploy it. And we've always done that at DeepMind, and we've always had that ethics and safety top of our minds from the beginning when we started, 12 years ago now, when AI was not popular like it is now. And we always had that in mind, and we have a very multidisciplinary team at DeepMind that thinks about these questions, including philosophers and social scientists. And I think we need to have wider debate with society, in society, about how we want to use these systems.
Sí.
Sí, quería que me hablara sobre el hallazgo de la capacidad de predicción de esas 350.000 proteínas humanas, creo recordar, más de 200 millones en total, no sé si los datos son correctos, que describiera cómo es la tecnología que lo ha hecho posible, que me explicara qué supone para los laboratorios disponer de esta información y qué aplicación puede tener para la salud humana y qué aplicación directa en la clínica puede tener este conocimiento. Gracias.
Yeah, so when we completed AlphaFold just 2 years ago now, we then predicted the structures of all the proteins in the human body. So it's about 20,000. So that's called the proteome, human proteome. It's the equivalent of the human genome, but for proteins. And only about 17% of those were known before we did all those predictions. And of course, that's incredibly important for understanding disease and also designing drugs to cure those diseases, because often you need to understand the structure of a protein in order to understand its function. And also, if you know the 3D shape of the protein, you can figure out where your chemical compound, your drug, needs to attach to block the function or to change the function of that protein. So it's very important for that. So that's the first thing we did. And then since then, in the last year, we have been working very hard to fold all 200 million proteins that is known to science. So that's every organism in the world that has so far been discovered. And it's really important for, firstly, loads of research animals like the mouse or the rat or the fruit fly. So that's really important for those researchers working on fundamental biology research. But also we folded all the protein structures for all the plants, including all the crops. So that's really important to understand how, if we want to have plants that are more resilient to climate change, or we want to invent something that helps with crops in terms of if any diseases are affecting trees or crops or plants, then having these structures could be extremely useful. And almost nothing about that was known because before AlphaFold came along, you'd have to do it experimentally, and it takes around 4 or 5 years of very painstaking experimental work to just find the structure of one protein. And obviously we've done 200 million now.
Sí, recuerden indicar el nombre y el medio para el que trabajan, por favor.
Hola, buenas tardes. Elena Fernández Pello, de la Nueva España. Yo le quería, primero darle la enhorabuena y después preguntar por esos usos o esos empleos no tan benéficos de la inteligencia artificial. Estamos en un contexto de guerra. No sé qué seguridad tenemos de que la inteligencia artificial no puede hacer la guerra por nosotros o que no puede elegir a nuestros gobernantes o
Yes, it's a good question. I mean, we, as far as our work's concerned and what we do at DeepMind, we've made very clear from the beginning we would not work on military applications, and we do not think that's a good use of AI technologies. But of course, it's an international question, and maybe things like regulation need to come in to enforce that, but it would have to be international. And of course, that requires international cooperation, which at the moment seems to be in quite short supply. So I think it's not really a technical question. It's actually a geopolitical question. And maybe that's tougher, because I think the technology, as I said at the start, inherently it's neutral in of itself. It depends how we deploy it and what we deploy it for. So, of course, I think things like lethal autonomous weapons should not be built. I think there should always be a human operator in the loop that makes the final decision on those things when it's a question of life or death or other important matters like medical issues. So that would be my recommendation. But, of course, it's an international question.
Gracias. Siguiente pregunta.
Sí, quería preguntarle también, he leído que usted decía que tenía sus padres eran tecnófobos, no le gustaba la tecnología. que usted venía a decir que no sabía de dónde había salido en cuanto a eso, ¿no? Porque sus hermanos tampoco se dedican a la tecnología. Yo quería preguntarle, ¿usted cómo educa a sus hijos? ¿Los educa con pantallas? ¿Los mantiene aislados de la tecnología? Cuéntenos cómo lo hace.
Yes, yes. My family, I would say, is very much on the artistic side and creative side. So, music and things like that. And that's it. That ended up being the jobs they ended up doing. So I was the odd one out in my family. Maybe it's because I learned to play chess from a very young age, so I got very interested in logical things and mathematics and computers. But I'm still very interested in the arts and humanity side of things. So I can, I love reading and things like philosophy and other stuff, and I think that helps me in my my scientific work, I would say. And as far as my kids, yes, they do. They, of course, do use computers and play games and use screens. It would be a bit hypocritical of me to not let them do that, given that's what I did when I was a child. Of course, I learned a lot about computers by building and designing computer games when I was a child. But I think actually there's nothing wrong with that, and I think things like games can be a very good introduction into computers and for children, because obviously they're fun, and I think it sort of reduces the barrier of for children to understand how to interact with these types of machines and systems.
¿Más preguntas?
Miguel Rey, de Vivir Asturias. Leo aquí en su currículum los mecanismos de aprendizaje de las máquinas. ¿Hay algún límite o se vislumbra algún límite en ese aprendizaje que puedan incluso superar a la inteligencia humana?
I think in terms of what kinds of things can be learned, I think that's an open question. And I think it's one of the most interesting questions that we are going to be answering on this journey to make artificial intelligence. So I also studied neuroscience and studied the brain for my PhD. So I did that for two reasons. One is that I'm fascinated by also how natural intelligence works and our brain works. But also I wanted to get inspiration for new ideas for AI algorithms from how the brain solves particular problems. So things like memory and imagination is what I particularly studied for and investigated for my PhD. And so I think there are many questions about consciousness or creativity or emotions, these kinds of things where it's not clear how they would work on a machine or even what that would mean. But I think as we progress with AI and build up more capabilities, we'll be able to compare these systems with the human mind to see what the differences are. And I think that will also help us to understand better what is unique to humans and what makes us unique. Things like dreaming, creativity, all of these kinds of questions that we have about how does the brain do that. But until now, from a neuroscience perspective, nothing has been concretely found about how the brain works that in theory could not be mimicked by a Turing machine, a computer, a classical computer. So as far as we know, everything that the brain does is computable in theory. But of course, whether that's possible to build in practice is an open research question.
Bueno, a cuenta de esto que ha comentado, no sé si la inteligencia artificial podrá llegar algún día a soñar o a componer obras de arte que son totalmente aleatorias y que incluso a nosotros nos cuesta descifrar, ¿no?, los mecanismos con los que se construyen. ¿Eso llegará a suceder o esa creatividad humana es irreplicable?
Yeah, so I think about human creativity, at least 3 levels of human creativity, and I think and each of them are more sophisticated levels. So I think the first level of creativity I would call interpolation. So, in that case, you show a machine, maybe you show them 1 million pictures of dogs and cats, and then you say, come up with an image of a cat. Right, and then it will do like a big averaging of all the things it's seen, right? So that I would call interpolation. So in theory, that is original because the average prototype cat is not has not been seen. It may be a new thing, a new image, but perhaps it's not very interesting type of creativity, that one. Then I would say there's extrapolation. So something like one of the programs we wrote, AlphaGo, to play the game of Go, I think exhibited extrapolation. So in this case, AlphaGo played the game of Go against itself millions of times and learned for itself how to play Go. And then it came up with a new idea, a new type of strategy, also in chess with AlphaZero, that had never been seen before. So to me, that is an original kind of idea or original strategy that even though we've been playing these games for thousands of years, we did not think of those ideas. But then there's one more level, which so far I think AI has not reached, which I would call true invention or out-of-the-box thinking, where instead of just finding a good Go move that's original, it would invent Go or invent chess. Not just find a good chess move, but actually invent a game as good as chess. And so far, AI systems cannot do that. So that was an interesting question of when or if they will be able to do that. And it's similar to the question of, can AI write a beautiful piece of music or a great novel or a great piece of art? I think we're seeing the beginnings of some creativity, more like the extrapolation type, the AlphaGo move or strategy. I think we're seeing that in these new systems that are text-to-image systems that you've probably seen to create artwork. I think they're still not, something great like a great artist like Picasso or Van Gogh would do, where they invent a new style or a new way of thinking about art. They're nothing like of that quality. But I think we're seeing the beginnings of something that one could call creativity on some level, maybe just very basic level. So the question is what is missing to get to that next level? But I don't see any fundamental reason why eventually AI systems would not be able to do that.
Tenemos tiempo para una última pregunta.
Pues yo quería preguntarle cuáles son los efectos nocivos que según su punto de vista está causando la tecnología, la nueva tecnología o la inteligencia artificial en la sociedad. Si pudiera detallárnoslos.
Yeah, I don't think there are many that I can think of right now in terms of currently today, but for sure in the future that could happen, again, if we deploy or use the AI systems in the wrong way. I think we can take some lessons maybe from social media technology, where I think initially it had good intentions, to connect more of the world together. But then, of course, we found out now in the last few years that there are these bad side effects, right? Manipulation of politics, all of these kinds of well-documented things, right? Fake news, etc. So I think what we need to do with AI is to be the opposite of maybe what was done with earlier technologies. So in Silicon Valley, there's this phrase, move fast and break things, which is the phrase, a kind of credo that is well known in the Valley, like makes a lot of advances. But in my opinion, we should do exactly the opposite of move fast and break things. We should not do that with something as powerful as AI. I think we need to be much more thoughtful. Maybe what I would suggest is we use the scientific method to carefully test out these ideas and understand what these systems can do before you deploy them at large in the world. Because once you do that, then it's too late to understand, it had this unintended consequence. Now, it's impossible to always get that correct, but I think we should try much harder and be much more intentional about that with these technologies. So that's the way we're approaching it as DeepMind, and we hope to be a role model for the rest of the research community, to think a lot more about these systems and understand them much better and interpret them and analyze them, much like you would do with a scientific project when you're investigating something. And I feel like that's the right approach for something as powerful, potentially as powerful as AI.